Hey, and welcome back to Real Truth Talks, the M&T story from darkness to light. Um, this is video number 12, and I just wanted to follow up on the previous videos that were sent. 11, 10, and 9 were all a compilation of videos that I didn't know Mark had made. And they were a blessed find because Em and I were going through healing and hospice at the same time. Um, I had truly, honestly given up um, because things had gotten to the point where he just was angry all the time. And then in September of 21, um, he'd come home, and I remember talking to the boys and, saying, Mark, Em wants to come home, or he was their adopted dad, but they refused to call him dad anymore. They just called him by his name. Um, and they had just had to live through days and weeks and countless hours of hearing him rage, of hearing him interrogate their mom. And he had extreme narcissistic behaviors. He was extremely paranoid and suspicious. And we never fought about anything except for his jealousy, his suspicion, his interrogation of me, his accusations, and then his violent outburst or suicidal talk and threats. That's all we fought about. It was only in November of 2020 when I had been sideswiped and drug by a semi, and he came there, and I saw from his BTW a message saying I love you and everything, and I saw the name. Then we fought about that. And I'm probably on a YouTube video somewhere screaming at him in public and, not accusing of him, saying, what I found, what I'd seen. And, he was caught. But later on down the road, I believed him that this was purely, a conversational type relationship. But narcissistic behavior is extremely selfish, and it stems out of extreme insecurity and pain. But one thing that is very similar is that they tend to leave a wake of pain and broken relationships. And but I honestly refused to give up. I did, however, no longer really practically think. I mean, even though I didn't give up, I just kept thinking someday down the road, but yet I knew he was getting sicker. And so I really believed we were going to run out of time, that there would not be healing, there would not be reconciliation. And in September of 21, he was here, and of course we didn't know he drank like he did. And he'd been home for 3 days, and I called the woman that he was in a relationship with a WHORE, because when you know that you know that they're married, they have children, and and one has autism and one has ADD. I mean, and severe social anxieties. They're homeschooled because of that reason, and we're wholly dependent on him. And never let me work. I was not allowed to work. I mean, I gave up even going to the grocery store. I was well, especially when COVID hit, it was just easier to not go out and not field. He had trackers on my phone. He'd had trackers on vehicles, and I found out there was a fight. I'm going to do some follow-ups because in some of his things, he talked about having me put in psych, and he did. And he had me arrested, and he did. Um, he became friends with military members in our county, with the sheriffs that were sheriffs. Everybody would feel sorry for Mark, or I mean, he was a great guy, and he was super personable. So there was this time in 2017, and the kids had all gone to Florida. We were going down for a family wedding, and the kids went down the night before. Well, Mark started drinking. I drank with him, and I don't know why, because he wanted me to. And he started getting jealous because once he started drinking, and he started and he grabbed me, and I got scared, because I have massive amounts of had damage from a previous relationship, especially my first husband who was abusive and whatever, and then he killed my daughter. So I mean, I knew where this stuff could end, and I freaked out and took off. Well, I had been drinking, we both had, and and I took off, and of course he had was calling me or whatever, and I eventually pulled over because I'm like, I'm blitzed. I cannot be driving. I was sitting in a bank parking lot, and in comes some lights, and we've had a report. Your husband called, and is you're out driving and da 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 da. You've been drinking, and I mean, I knew I'd been drinking, but I wasn't driving, and so he um, pressed charges, and so I got a DUI. The part about why him pressing charges was he knew I was really, really close to, like, I don't know what I can do. Anyway, I couldn't drive, so he had to drive me out of everywhere. And he knew that. He knew that. He didn't want me around other people. He wanted me literally all to himself. And if you watch the other videos, you will hear him say, uh, D, the BTW, would give me a little bit more time. He was so selfish. I mean, if I would spend time with the kids or I would go anywhere, I mean, in our years together, he had literally interrogated me and at times accused me literally of sleeping with my son-in-law, my brother-in-law, my non-biological brother, the neighbors, strangers, UPS people, FedEx people. I do not know. I could go from here to the grocery store, and he would literally interrogate me over every step I made. What did you do? What did you do then? Good God, I'm autistic. I don't know. I do, you know? And the family knew that. And the people that believed his BS had seen him. I mean, I couldn't go out and walk with a girlfriend in the neighborhood, but that he would be blowing up my phone. Um, we had neighbors that would pretty regularly call the police on him because of his actions. He would follow me, come through the neighborhood hunting me down, and he would accuse me of lying if he couldn't find out exactly where we were. Um, God forbid I left my phone at home, because most of the time he knew where I was if I had my phone. Um, but I was really good at breaking things, so he didn't always, it wasn't on there 24/7. Because if I had a new phone, right, I don't know what it was that he would do to my phones. Um, and then the second time I got labeled for a DUI was 3 years later, and we were arguing or whatever. Now he is cheating, and literally everything he accused me of: lying, cheating, um, um, stealing, because they stole our money. I mean, I consider him taking money out of our checking account. He canceled my cards at one time because he got torqued off, cut off our turned off our internet and cable at the house so he could pay for it for her to have, because she wasn't working. So he paid for her house payment, her car payment, bought her a car, her insurance, her medication, you know, so that he would have somewhere to go. Because I don't know for sure, because his family wouldn't stop speaking to me or having anything to do with us because we were crazy. No, we were real. You know, this is real life. But yeah, he would do stuff like that. So, you know, he would accuse me of being, you know, an alcohol and drug addicted, drug stealing. He would tell everybody I was stealing his medications. Okay, no, I was taking care of him. He was always trying to kill himself. That was the only thing he didn't accuse me of. And then anyway, so the DUI really was in retaliation for him getting arrested in July, June or July, something like that, earlier in the year of 21. He was raging. We now know, you know, looking back, that he must have been on a bender. And I mean, the boys and I were locked in a room, in the laundry room. Then he left, apparently, probably went to go get something to drink. And we came out and we heard him come in. We heard him pulling in, and I put us in a bedroom. And he was beating the door down. And I called 911. We're scared because this had literally been like 6, 8 hours, an all day thing. Well, many hours, you know, off and on. And they came, and I did not press charges, but they saw the marks on my neck. And so the police pressed charges. And anyway, he yelled and screamed and convinced me, you know, it would be better. He wouldn't be like this, whatever. So I asked the judge to drop the charges. And as you can guess, nothing got better. So he did a lot of retaliation in 27 and 2018. Don't 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 stand up for yourself with a narcissist or a person with narcissistic behavior, because they'll make you pay. So that was the conviction. Got my license back and all that in 2018, and then and between 2017 and 2018, you know, he would call up and say, "Oh, she's trying to kill herself," um, and that was 2 or 3 times. And at one point, I literally had a psychotic break, and it was not good. Yeah, it was terrible. And yeah, I was drinking because, you know, it was just bad. It was so bad, you know, because I was scared, you know, not saying it was the right thing to do, but I thought, shoot, if he's going to kill me, he's going to kill me. And I really, you know, and I would fight back for myself if I had been drinking. I mean, I would stand up to him. That's when I would get bruised up. So, yeah, it's not really a good thing. So, anyway, so all of that, now we're here. And so then all the way to 2021, and when he acted out. And anyway, so his BTW would text or call, and he would start feeling bad. Then he'd start feeling, oh my God, I don't want her to find it, find me, want me to find it. And she would tell him things like, because he couldn't perform for her in a physical way. And, you know, to me, BTWs or Ws, HOREs, you know, will pleasure themselves and stuff and try to turn somebody on. But she was religious enough that he would tell me she didn't like to be touched. Okay, so if you just she does herself in front of you, then she's not a hypocrite. Yeah, okay. But, um, and, he couldn't drink, or he hadn't left, or wasn't drinking enough. He would start having things, DTs, and getting sick, and the sweating and the throwing up. And we all just thought it was part of his cancer. And that because he had Gulf War illness, and so that we attributed it to that, not that he needed alcohol or that he needed extra drugs that he had, because he was buying fentanyl off the street. I think I've said that before. Suboxone, methadone clinics, um, and getting pills from other people so that he didn't go through his anyway. So he did his rage thing, took off, and he kept calling me up, and he kept threatening he was going to kill himself, because he would feel so guilty. And he knew he belonged at home. He wanted to be at home, but like he said, he didn't deserve us. And, and later on down the road, I'm like, well, you're right, but I love you anyway. I always loved you. I told you when we got married, I was never going through a divorce again. And that you better mean, that this was forever and that you loved me. Um, and the other thing is, and this is messages from her, um, Mark would not break up with somebody. Um, he didn't break, from what I hear. He would just make life so hellish or miserable or whatever that they broke up with him. And Mark would say, I never loved her. He said, I thought I did in the first little bit. Um, but then I realized that I didn't. She wasn't you. That is, I have to believe that, because from her own messages, um, she was like, well, you just go back to Tammy like it was a punishment. Because I've heard you've done this before. Um, and I really loved you till you bashed me. And what he had done is told the truth to me. And I had messaged her and just said, hey, can we talk? Because I thought maybe she didn't know about us. She didn't care. And let me tell you, she took thousands of dollars happily from him and other men. But now we're coming back to what she said, and she's like, well, you would never let me come to your apartment. If he was really in love with her, he wouldn't have gotten an apartment. Um, be, and so, here we were paying money for apartment. He was paying money for her. It was great. And he never let her come to a doctor appointment. When he was sick, when he went into, um, the chemo clinics, anything, he always wanted me there. Um, and even in his wounded, broken mind, when he would OD or do something and end up in psych or whatever, he would be angry that I wasn't there with him. Didn't know he was there, didn't know what he was doing, but he would still be angry with me. I mean, just really, for a very long time, didn't know anything other than rage. Now, when he was around other people, his family or his friends, he would act like the poor, beaten down little guy. I mean, he was excellent at getting sympathy. Excellent at getting sympathy. But because an autistic empath, which just means you're very aware of emotions and things, which is odd, that you can do that. You can be an autistic and do that, but I am. And so all he wanted was me. And he was caught in so much conflict, and he really did believe in, because, well, AI told him, go ahead and let me find you cheating. Let me find you cheating. He said, I'm not sure if I will divorce you, but you will not see me. You will never. I will cut my phones. I will change. I will sell the house, and I will disappear. Um, but the whole world will know. And if you want to push a divorce, go ahead, because I will get it on the grounds of, I was just saying, because I couldn't fathom that he would actually really have an adulterous relationship. Yeah, shows you what I knew. Um, and So, when the things were handed down, I was there for the last appointments with his oncologist, and they just said they'd been trying to tell him for almost a year. There's nothing more we can do. So the last year, before he went into hospice, so the last year and a half of his life was just hellish. He was falling apart mentally and emotionally. He wanted to come back home, and he would come back home, and then she would start messaging him, and and that was just hurting him. And so on that day, on September 17th of 21, he like threw everything, broke a flagpole over our dog, went after our son, and called him a GD no good, effing FAGGOT, and went after him. And I don't even know how I got in between them and, pushed him off of our 18-year-old son. But the look of terror, sheer terror on my son's face, it's like, all right, that's it. And so he took off, called me a few times. You going to give me my meds? You going to give me my meds? I said, no, I told you if you came back home for the last time, because I had to beg the boys. I'm like, Mark says, whatever, he won't do it again. And, and they called their sister, their adult sister, and I got a phone call, and they're like, listen, go ahead. If he leaves again, this is it. This is it. Don't you dare, because you're not putting the boys through that anymore. And so sure enough, and he just just tore up the house, threw things everywhere. He'd hurt me, grabbed my arm, and twisted it, um, and so then he called the police himself. And they came, and he was like, trying to, she won't give me my medications. Well, because he was like, I'm going to go and park off in the back 40 and, whatever. So, no, you're not taking your pain pills. And B, you're not, you keep saying, yeah, I want to be home. And then you do this crazy stuff, and we don't know what's going on. And he even said, I don't know why. I don't know why I kept doing this. And came in, and the officer said something, and I said, and when Em had said he was calling the sheriffs, I said, boys, don't touch anything. Do not pick anything up. Don't clean anything up. And just leave it. And he came in because I was afraid he was going to try to make charges against me, and they were going to arrest me again. And and he walked in, and he looked at everything. He talked to each of us separately, and it was just taking a long time. And then, gosh, he asked us to write out statements. And then after an hour or so, an hour and a half, something like that, of just talking and back and forth and whatever, he told us, me and our 18-year-old autistic, he said, he's going to jail, and we're charging him with DV and assault on your son. Okay. And he said, if we charge him, he said, will you just show up? And I had promised my family, I'm saying, you know, I, and I said, yeah, it's time. It's time. I didn't make the call. We were just going to clean up like we normally would, and go on about our business. But, but good God knew it was time. And he went, and he tried to message me and talk to me, and ask me to, talk to the judge. You have to do it. You have to drop charges and whatnot. I said, nope. I said, my family will not let me, and I promise you, I'm not losing my kids. Um, because if I drop these charges, they'll take the kids. And my sister lives, uh, my living sister stays out of state, and I knew my adult daughter would do it. She would file charges with DSS because she works for DSS, and uh, my son-in-law works for the attorney general, and I knew they would. I said, nope, choosing my kids this time. I love you, but this was it. I don't know why you're doing it. Um, So I guess that was the turning point, and then in the first part of 2022, um, she ends up breaking up with him when he's in rehab, a physical rehab, and he hadn't come clean. Well, he didn't come clean to me. Some friends of his did, and then, which was actually a really, really, really horrible, horrible, horrible time, but then the best thing that ever happened, because that was the bad history, but the good history is it the shock of him knowing that he was on hospice, and that would mean you're at the max, and he lived 6 months and a week from the day he signed in. We signed him in. I signed him in. They showed up. I did the signing. I did. I took care of him and everything. And then when he went on round the clock every 2 hour medication, um, I consulted the family. Actually, my side of the family suggested I move him home. And by then I was terrified because he had a permanent restraining order. He was convicted in January of 2022. It was only second degree domestic violence. They reduced everything so that they would make sure they got a conviction. Because actually the prosecutor, domestic violence prosecutor, remembered our case from 2017. Um, Apparently you don't get a lot of autistics, and she actually teared up when I said, yeah, go ahead and prosecute. It's not me. I said, you guys do whatever you do. I'm not going to stop you. So um, just please no jail time for him that was my only request. I did want them to put him on a wrist, ankle monitor so he couldn't retaliate. But anyway, the Lord worked it out. And after consulting with the boys and on the advice of my daughter and my sister about bringing him home, they put him on every 2 hour pain medication, um, which would have meant I would have been at his place round the clock, and that just wasn't working. God wanted this relationship and this family back together. So for the last 4 months, 6 months, because the boys would help me, those who had been most victimized, I guess, by the things that he had done, took care of him. And it was a blessing because it healed us and it healed him. And he made his peace with God halfway into his hospice journey. It was about August. Yeah, about mid August of 2022. He really, really made peace and yielded and called, his commander in chief because he's military. And then peace reigned. And, you know, he'd been sober quite a little bit, you know, longer than he had in 10 years by then. And some things happened, and he got it. He got it. And he saw, and he would cry. And sometimes I'd go over and I'd be close by or something, and I'd just catch him crying. And I'm like, you know, I'd ask him, what's wrong? And I'd say, I'm so sorry. We could have always lived like this, quiet and calm. And he was just, he didn't worry, he knew I loved him. Maybe not like I had in the early days, which is what he wanted, but, we were still together, and I didn't hate him. He was happy for that, And he said, I'm sorry so many times. He wrote letters to his kids. He tried to make things right. He made videos. I found some notes he had written because I knew he was making a journal, so of course I read it. But then after he passed away, I found some notes that I hadn't seen, saying he loved me and how sorry he was. He even wrote a series of notes and things to his BTW after talking with his psychiatrist and with the chaplain. And it was actually something, and I think it was Proverbs, I think, about what happens when you're with a loose woman or a W. And he attempted to write those out for her. I mean, he was angry because he saw that she had manipulated him the way he'd manipulated other people. And anyway, so don't give up. Don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal. If you're having substance abuse problems, do everything you can to get better. Prayer changes things. God can heal anybody, and He can heal any relationship if you, He can. I, I, I've seen it more than once. I saw God change my mother, and then I saw God change my husband. And those who had known him before, nobody, one person from his past, from his side of the world, came to see him when he was on hospice. Just one. His dad and his brother did call him regularly, but other than that, he'd ruined. Oh, he'd ruined. Well, no, maybe one other person tried, but they'd also were anti me and were trying to fix him up with other people. Those weren't friends. Um, anyway, so it, there was peace. There was peace. Fight for peace. Fight for your family. And there is a beautiful sense of peace and completion and staying married. He'd been divorced once, me twice. And I'm just so grateful. I am so grateful. Of course, it still hurts. Um, but, that's not something I'm trying to learn how not to focus on. So there we go. That was a big, long old follow-up. There's so many other little things to tell about our life, and for those women, I'm going to speak to women or, well, anybody going through relationship, but I'm a woman, and so I don't know what it feels like to be a man dealing with a narcissistic, acting female. But all I do know is Jesus is the answer. God's amazing. Anybody can change. And the best prayer that I've heard from a wonderful preacher is pray for the person, love your enemies, and pray for the ones that hurt you. So yeah, I'm even praying for the woman that tried to tear apart our family. I'm praying for those, a lot of people, just like I was prayed for, and like he was prayed for. And I firmly believe that, it's a choice, and I'm just grateful Mark did choose God. And because when he died, the look on his face was peaceful. He looked at rest like he was asleep. And he was military, and we talked many times. It looked like he had been out on difficult maneuvers and just fell asleep from just exhaustion. And he was exhaustion because at the end, he was in constant pain. Whew. So, there you go. be blessed. We will close out the M&T story for now.